Yes, welcome back. You're still watching Power Breakfast. This is a news review with me, Fred Indemuli. This morning, I'm privileged to have in studio Gladys Wanga, Woman Representative, Homa Bay County, and Sabina Chege, Woman Representative, Murang'a County, for our news review. Good morning, ladies. Karibuni sana.
Good morning, Fred.
Quite a lot coming out of yesterday's Labor Day celebrations. Very many pronouncements made there by Atwoli, which features on the front page of the Daily Nation. Shock of a plea to extend Uhuru rule beyond 2022. That kind of debate sparked off by comments by Francis Atwoli yesterday. Will definitely continue, and it is a big discussion, and we'll be getting to that as well. But let's start off with the fact that it's back to school today. Yes, surprises for parents, pupils, as schools reopen. This is a big one, especially because of the flood situation in the country. One of those areas that has been hard hit is Murang'a County. Yeah. And families have been displaced. Most of them are now have sought shelter in schools, in churches, and other places. But now it means that, yes, going back to school will be a problem. I've just watched you and your colleague, Bona Ndidi Nyoro, on TV, talking about the same issue. But how, just describe the situation for us.
I'll say the situation is bad. And in my county, we have several constituencies that have been affected, where we have even lost lives. And it's unfortunate that even some of the areas where we can see disaster in waiting, some people have not even moved. So most of the families have moved to some of the schools. We are working closely, and we are hoping and very optimistic by this week the special programs, that is the Ministry of Devolution, NYS, will also be moving to the ground. Some of these things can be avoided because it depends with how the flood water is being managed. But most unfortunately, some schools might not open because we have people who are already seeking shelter in those schools. Yes. And there are also issues of these people when they moved, everything went with the water, so they don't have clothing, they don't have food stuff. We as the leaders have done our bit. We have tried to help them, but they also need a lot of health care. We have small children who are exposed. It's still raining, it's still cold. So they are also, they can come also other diseases, and we really need to protect these people. But maybe the bigger plan is how to relocate the victims, because some of the places where landslides happened, they might not be able to go back. Wow. More than 10 acres of land in just one area called Getuge has gone. And so they don't have a place where they can build, they don't have a place where they can farm. They actually have no home. So the government must have a plan. The way we take care of IDPs, we must also take care of the people who have been affected by the mudslides to see how they can be helped. You know, Murang'a is quite a very steepy place and hilly. And so we might also need to look at how we plan our land. As we farm, as we plant the coffee and tea, we need to know how we plan our land, how we need to have agricultural officers coming in to also train our farmers. Because once the rains comes and the soil is light, then we will not avoid landslides even in the future. Yes.
So the fact is that quite a number of schools may not reopen for the second term, and meanwhile the rains continue, and the weatherman says this could go on until June. How is the situation in Homa Bay?
I think in Homa Bay, there are areas that are very seriously affected. Actually, I've just come from, yesterday I was in Osodo, Kobuya, in Karachuonyo, where people are actually camping in schools. So the schools are, I don't know how students are going to go back there because their bedrooms, they're living in tents, you know, in makeshift houses. And I think we really need to deal with some of these areas, because I was, you know, places like Kobuya and Osoda in Karachuonyo, those areas, it's been flooding for the, you know, last so many years. I really am looking forward to taking this up to ensure that there is a lasting solution found, because some of those places, if we just put dikes and gabions, the floodwaters, this is River Miriu, the floodwaters will definitely go into Lake Victoria, and we will be done with this issue. And
the irony of it is that places like Budalangi, that we were reading for years about flooding there every other year, no longer experience floods because of something simple,
gabions and dikes.
Building of dikes. And surely this is something that you as leaders should probably push for, because this will happen again. The rains will come even next year.
I think those are the interventions we require. And especially like in Murang'a, where we have the roadworks going on, and the people who are constructing the roads not caring about where the flood waters go. So what has been happening is that we have new roads, we have no drainage, and so this water is directed to the farms. We have a place where last year, I think even it's Citizen that covered, there was a very huge crack, and now what has happened when the water, the flood water comes in, it's going through that crack, and it has gone. That's why we had the first landslide. And now we have an area that is like an island. So if it continues to rain, that means the whole of that entire land will go. And that means all the families that are there will be affected. So there are things that we can avoid.
Yes.
There are things that need proper planning. And we as leaders, that's what we need. We need to do the interventions now, not just for now, but even for the future.
Yes, because we're not that helpless,
No.
Gladys. We're not that helpless. If Budalangi could be sorted out,
Yes.
surely we can sort out these other places.
No, it's something we want to pursue very, very aggressively.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, away from the floods, of course, other issues to do with the reopening of schools. The 500 principals are being transferred, so probably quite a number of students will find new principals heading their institutions, as well as that issue of teacher scarcity in northern Kenya. Free healthcare coming up as well. These are just some of the things that parents and pupils will find new as they open school for the second term. Now let's go to the Labor Day, because quite a number, even before the politics, quite a number of things with regard to workers happened yesterday. Of course, the 5% incremental minimum wage. There's also the debate about the change in labor laws. Yes, of course, it is understandable the government is keen to actually reduce the number of industrial action, the number of instances of industrial action, the number of essential services that have been affected. We've seen, we've just come from that 100-day doctor strike last year. We've seen teachers go on strike over and over again. Now we're seeing lecturers on strike for today, the 63rd day. Yes, it does make sense to actually ensure that essential services are not disrupted, even in instances of industrial action. But labor unions don't feel like that is the case. Probably they feel that they're seeking, someone is seeking to punish them. This bill is already before Parliament. It's alive. The House is alive to the fact that this bill is before it, sponsored, of course, by the government, delivered by the leader of majority. He has said clearly through a statement that he is only the messenger. He is not the one behind this. But what is your take on this matter? Is it, have you looked at the bill, and is it something that should just pass as is? The fact that, yes, some essential services need to be retained even in case of industrial action?
Well, I think I sit in the Labour Committee, and the bill has been committed to our committee. And there are very serious issues raised, which is, one, you cannot stop unionists from striking, because this is a constitutional right. And the fact that you say, even if people are on strike, so and so and so and so, some people must remain to work, then defeats the purpose of a strike or of an industrial action. Because why do people take industrial action? People take it so that the effect is felt, and once the effect is felt, then negotiations can happen. But when you say that some people must stay and provide essential services, then you puncture the essence of industrial action. And this is why it is opposed. And we're going to be looking at it. We're going to be going on a retreat to look close by close at, this is coming through an omnibus, you know, it's coming through a miscellaneous amendment a bill. And so there's a lot, there's about 11 laws concerning the labor movement that have been affected there. So one of those things is, are we not affecting the basic human rights of workers when we stop them from actually that right? And I think one thing that must be understood is you cannot stop strikes by legislating. I think we need to have a mechanism for resolving our disputes, especially among workers, because we haven't seen these very, very, very long strikes. It's this attitude that some people have said, you know, do whatever you can for as long as you can. You come to the table when you want. I think when workers raise issues, there should be immediate action. You know, let's sit on the table. What can we give? What can you take? What can you give? What can you take? So that people feel respected. But I think another very another very controversial amendment in that miscellaneous amendment bill is the fact that affecting the quorum within a place like NSSF. Because, you know, right now, for you to have quorum to sit on the NSSF board, there must be a worker and there must be an employer for you to have quorum.
Yes.
But then what the amendment is doing is to say quorum will only just be for any force. So even government can sit with all the representatives of government and form quorum and move on. And what the workers and the employers are saying is that, no, this is workers' money and employers are paying it.
Yes.
So for NSSF board to proceed with business, there must be a worker and an employer, and they want to retain that amendment. They want to retain that act that way and not bring this amendment that eliminates them. Okay. So these are some of the things that have to be looked at, and these are some of the things that are unnecessary. This amendment on quorum at NSSF was brought in the last parliament, it was shut down, and now it's coming back. And I think in my view, it's not in good faith.
Okay. Yeah. Of course, you'd understand where the government is coming from. They need to contain the kind of effects that come due to industrial action. But then again, as Gladys Wanga put it, we run the risk of being over-legislated because should we really legislate how people go on strike?
Well, I think most of the countries that have really developed, they are countries that have strictly followed the law. And for me, my opinion is that we need to change our attitude. You don't have to go to strike for your employer to listen to you. We need to change our way of doing things. We need to change our style and our approach. What has happened, even in mainly the international standards, when there are issues of the workers, the grievances, is a channel that is supposed to be followed. And people should not suffer because of a strike. And that's one I strongly believe. I was in education before, in the last parliament. This year, or this parliament, I am heading health. It is unfortunate when the workers are having a pull and push between themselves and the government that the innocent Kenyans will lose many lives. And I think the first thing is, why did you choose a profession, either to become a doctor or to become a nurse? And I think we need to be human internationally. And even if you travel and even go to the States, no one is allowed to leave. You leave somebody dying because you're actually fighting for your rights, because where your rights end, the other person's rights starts. And I think we need to really reason out. One thing, for the government to be responsible. If there are issues, sort out the issues. You don't have to wait for teachers or workers or doctors to go on strike. You know, all these things that we say, we are going to have the mother strike. And you know, one day I remember when I met with the Kenya National Union of Teachers and KUPPET, and they were trying to say, this next year we are the ones who will call the strike first. You know, there was that competition on who calls the strike first. And at the end of the day, I asked them, really, are you really genuine, even with calling of the strike? And sometimes we can also ask for things that maybe the government cannot deliver. I think we need to have a very sober conversations between the government or between the employer and the employee. And what we need to do is follow the law, and at the same time, the government should not oppress, or even the employer, because the employer is not only the government anyway. They should not
you talk
oppress
about change in attitude, but do you think that these change in laws will encourage a change in attitude?
It can, let me tell you, and I think we need really to be very considerate, because you have seen the scenarios in our hospitals. And even, for example, even when the nurses went on strike, even after that, you also saw that the Council of Governors sat and said, let us pay them even for the time that when they were also on strike. Really, it's unfair. If we have families who suffered, we have lives that were lost, I think people should take responsibility. And especially the issue of life should come first, because, well, for the teachers, and I'll say, you can miss a lesson today and tomorrow you can do a review, or you can even add some more hours to cover for your lesson. But if you lose a life, you can never get it back. There's no, there's no second chance. Once somebody is gone, it's gone. Many families have suffered, and we have lost many lives, and I think we need to change the way we see things. Okay. And for me, I think when they talk about like the quorum at NSSF, well, if the workers should be there, and even the employer should be there, because yes, they're the contributors, but in the first place, why should you miss a meeting? So that's the question. And I think when they say quorum is quorum, if the quorum is 4, even Wanga knows, even in our committee, when we say out of 18, the quorum is 9, it doesn't matter whether all the opposition are there or it's only the government side that is there. Why have you missed the meeting in the first place? I think we need to take responsibility. Don't run away from the meeting because there's a subject that wants to be discussed and you feel it's going to affect you, then you run away from the meeting so that the meeting will not happen. finally, I think what we need to do with the workers, we've had the same people leading for a very long time. I think it's a high time that we also get new faces. And we also get, yes, we also get new thoughts, because I think when we have the same people getting so comfortable and knowing the way around, and the institutions and these even unions looking like an individual, like without a name of a specific person, then that union doesn't exist. I think it's a high time we really. Well,
we have such headlines. Wilson Sosion ousted from KNUT. That's on page 4. Sosion toppled from KNUT. These are some of the old faces you're talking about. Sosion has headed that particular union for a while. Yeah. Francis Atwoli has been at the helm of KOTU for quite a while as well. But your feeling about that issue, the fact that you need to change the leadership of the unions, is it necessary? Really?
No, you see, Fred, unions elect their officials.
Yes.
And you know, it will not take an MP or someone to go and say change. No. The unions elect their own officials. If they want to elect Atwoli until he's toothless, it is really up to them. If they want to elect Sosion until whatever time, it is really up to them. I think people must be given space, and elections are held, and nobody, you know, sits there. I've seen KOTU elections. KOTU, in fact, sometimes Atwoli himself says, I want to get out of here. And you see, they are the ones who come and say, no, 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 we want you to stay. So really, I think you can't control what the unions do. I remember the last 2 elections of KOTU, Atwoli himself has said, no, 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 no. I don't want, I want to retire. But then the members of KOTU say, no, stay and lead us. So I think we can't control what unions do. But I think the laws, as much as we want to retain essential services, you cannot say that somebody who calls a strike will be fined 500,000, a strike that disrupts essential services. If a strike is not disruptive, it is useless. Why would you call a strike that disrupts nothing and expect that you would sit on the table on the basis of that strike? If a strike is not disruptive, it is useless. This law just stops at the point of saying, really, all your strikes are illegal, and therefore do not go. Because
isn't that a conflict with the Constitution, which provides
exactly the rights? So this is why it is my strong belief that these laws, these amendments, are unconstitutional. And I think they will be null and void to the extent to which they contradict the Constitution. Because if I'm told I'm a union official, I will be fined 500,000 if my strike disrupts essential services, then it means nurses cannot call a strike, doctors cannot call a strike, teachers cannot call a strike, because these are essential services. Education is a basic right. So I think if there are issues that need to be resolved, let us not try to go through the back door in legislation to untwist and attack workers' rights.
Is that, do you feel that this is a route, a backdoor route?
I don't think so. And they say we are guided and guarded by the law. And you see, I like when people say it's in the Constitution. It's also in the Constitution that, you know, health, education, such things are basic rights. And so where and I want to repeat again, where your rights and mine starts. And so you cannot just be the person who will always fight for your rights and you don't even also think about me. And I think when we are doing these laws, and it's good that Gladys is in the Labour Committee, we also do public participation. So we will also invite, if it's the unions, if it's the people who are affected, we'll invite them to come before the committee. So it doesn't mean that the way the law is, there is provision for amendment. So it doesn't mean that the way it has been brought to Parliament, that's how it's going to pass.
So you do not necessarily support all the...
No, not necessarily, not all of them. Okay. But I think we should have some order. And at the end of the day, we should also be very human. As you're fighting for your rights, also think about the other person. And I think we also should also compare internationally. What happens? What happens? Even, you know, you'll get some countries where if you are on duty, you cannot leave your workstation until the other person comes in. Yes. So you cannot say my hours, I was supposed to work for 8 hours and my hours are gone. The other person has not come in. Like what happened in Kenyatta, and we had the mixed up surgery. And because the other person has not come in, I just hand over to whoever is there and leave. You know, there are some basic standards that we must apply, and this one must be in law.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the bill is already before the Labour Committee of the National Assembly, and of course this discussion will continue as the Labour Committee even seeks public participation on that matter. Let's now take a break. When we come back, we take a look at the politics that played out yesterday at the Labour Day celebrations here in Nairobi. One of them features on the headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. Shock of a plea to extend Uhuru rule beyond 2022. Imagine that. President Uhuru Kenyatta, after retirement, what role will he play? Francis Atwoli believes he should still remain or at least have some role in government. Plus, what happened to resist that movement led by Gladys Wanga? She'll be telling us what's the future with that after the break.